It's May 13th here in Seoul, and I'm Kim Dami. We begin with the stories making the headlines at this hour, starting with official campaigning for South Korea's 21st presidential election. The presidential candidates on Monday spent the first day of the official campaigning seeking to unite and woo their supporters. Top contenders, including the Democratic Party's Lee Jae-myung, the Conservative People Power Party's Kim Moon-soo, and the minor New Reform Party's Lee Jun-seok will head to the southeastern region on Tuesday to do the same. U.S. President Donald Trump says he may speak with Chinese President Xi Jinping this weekend following the two countries' tariff agreement. Wall Street welcomed the 90-day tariff deal with a rally. South Korean conductor Chung Myung-whun has been appointed as the new music director of Italy's Teatro alla Scala and becoming the first Asian to lead the famed opera house in its nearly 250-year history. South Korea is now officially in campaign mode for the June 3rd presidential election. The Democratic Party's Lee Jae-myung made his campaign debut in Central Seoul with a call for national unity. Our correspondent Shin Ha-young starts us off.
Seoul's Gwanghwamun was the first stop of the official campaign of Democratic Party presidential candidate Lee Jae-myung, where he drew around 20,000 people. The DP launched the campaign and Lee delivered his first public speech as the official presidential candidate of the party on Monday at Cheonggae Plaza near Gwanghwamun. Lee's camp chose this place as his first stop because it's where people gathered with light sticks calling for the impeachment of former President Yoon Suk-yeol. The DP refers to the process of overcoming the December 3rd martial law declaration and subsequent unrest as a revolution of light. The concept of the campaign centers on listening and unity. During the speech, he emphasized that national unity was his #1 priority.
I'm running not only as the DP's candidate, but for all people who seek to end insurrections, overcome crisis, and ensure everyone's happiness. I will lead with humility to unite the country, which I believe is the president's most important duty.
Lee's camp also outlined 3 key goals: recovery, growth, and happiness, along with 10 major pledges. These included boosting the economy, restoring democracy, strengthening national security, and overcoming challenges such as the low birth rate, the aging population, and climate change. The camp also emphasized transforming South Korea into one of the world's top 3 AI powers. After finishing in Seoul, Lee then headed south to visit what the party calls the K Initiative Belt, which includes Pangyo and Dongtan in Gyeonggi-do Province, as well as Daejeon. In Pangyo, known for its IT companies, Lee focused on innovation. He spoke with workers in IT research and development and said he plans to expand support for startups. On a visit to Dongtan, home to major chip maker plants, he asked for support as he pledged to boost the semiconductor industry. As part of his visit to the K Initiative Belt, Lee Jae-myung wrapped up the first day of his official campaign in Daejeon, a hub for scientific research, where he highlighted science and technology. Shin Ha-young, Arirang News, Daejeon.
And the People Power Party's Kim Moon-soo chose a local market in Seoul to launch his campaign with a pledge to look after people's livelihoods. He also made sure to unite those conservative supporters led down by a clash within the party over a candidate merger. Our Kim Do-yeon reports.
Livelihoods, the economy, and integrity. That's what People Power Party presidential candidate Kim Moon-soo emphasized as he kicked off his first official day on the campaign trail. He wrapped up the day in familiar territory, Daegu, a traditional conservative stronghold, and his hometown. Born and raised in and around the city, Kim appealed directly to longtime party loyalists and his fellow former neighbors.
But now, while Somun Market has improved a lot and Daegu has seen great progress, we still face many challenges. To overcome these difficulties, we must once again build a great Republic of Korea.
Kim also leaned into a new campaign slogan launched Monday, "A New Korea with Integrity, Kim Moon-soo." He told the crowd he's an honest man, that he simply can't lie. The slogan, according to the party, reflects a call for unity, bridging divides across gender, generations, and ideology. Here at the rally in Daegu, prominent party figures such as floor leader Kwon Sung-dong took the stage in a show of unity, aiming to project a cohesive front amid recent tensions between Kim and the leadership over a proposed merger with independent candidate Han Duck-soo. Daegu, on the other hand, was only one of 3 cities that he campaigned on Monday as he started his day at 5 a.m. at Karak Market, an agricultural wholesale market in southern Seoul. This is to show his motivation in improving the livelihoods of working-class people, according to him. And this market is where wholesale and retail, sellers and consumers come together starting from the early hours.
I really need to become a market president, a president for livelihoods, also a president for the economy. I think I need to become a president who improves living in South Korea.
After a campaign committee meeting at party headquarters, Kim headed south, making a stop at Daejeon National Cemetery to honor those who sacrificed for the country, a gesture he said reflects the foundation of his political values. Joining him throughout the day was newly appointed interim party leader Kim Yong-tae, a 34-year-old freshman lawmaker. Formally accepted the role with an apology for the past 5 months of internal strife, acknowledging the party's failures in leadership, accountability, and bipartisan cooperation. Kim Do-yeon, Arirang News, Daegu.
And with the election seen as a three-way race, also joining the campaign trail is the Reform Party candidate Lee Jun-suk, who pledged to nourish the economy and rebuild institutions. Lee headed to an industrial complex in the southern city of Yeosu, calling for policies to revitalize the country's struggling export hubs. He also proposed introducing flexibility on the minimum wage to boost labor competitiveness while ramping up industrial safety standards. Upon his return to Seoul, he launched himself as a presidential contender at the age of 40, saying the upcoming election is a showdown between the future and the past, integrity and corruption. U.S. President Donald Trump said China has agreed to fully open its market to U.S. firms and signaled that he may speak with Chinese President Xi Jinping this week following a temporary tariff truce agreement. Our Lee Soo-jin has more.
President Donald Trump on Monday hailed the temporary de-escalation of trade tensions with China as a total reset that will open China's market to American companies.
In addition, yesterday we achieved a total reset with China after productive talks in Geneva, and they've agreed to open China, fully open China. And I think it's going to be fantastic for China. I think it's going to be fantastic for us.
He also told reporters in the Oval Office that he may speak to Chinese President Xi Jinping later this week. The U.S. and China reached a trade agreement that slashes U.S. tariffs on Chinese goods to 30% from 145% and lowers Chinese tariffs on U.S. imports to 10% from 125%, a decision that cuts tariffs from both nations by 115%. But sector-specific tariffs on automobiles, aluminum, and steel are still in place, and China will be subject to tariffs on pharmaceuticals that Trump previously said would arrive shortly. The agreement followed 2 days of discussions held in Switzerland between senior-level officials from both nations.
Neither side wants a decoupling. We do want trade. We want more balanced trade, and I think that both sides are committed to achieving that.
The two sides held in-depth exchanges on trade and economic issues of their respective concern. The atmosphere of the meeting was candid, in-depth, and constructive.
The deal, which will be in place by May 14, will be effective for 90 days and sets up a framework for further talks between the two countries. U.S. stocks responded positively to the news, with the Dow Jones surging to close at 2.81%. The S&P 500 closed nearly 3.3% up, while the tech-heavy Nasdaq closed 4.35% compared to the previous trading day. This comes as investors reacted favorably to the unexpected progress in talks between the U.S. and China, sparking a rally in major tech stocks such as Nvidia, Amazon, and Meta. Companies like Best Buy and Dell Technologies, which rely heavily on Chinese manufacturing, also saw strong gains. Lee Soo-jin, Arirang News.
So the U.S. and China managed to agree to a break from their tariff spat for now. Now, will the 90-day pause really reset their relations and draw out an ultimate end to the trade war? Let's turn to Professor Park Min-jung this morning. Welcome back, Professor Park.
Good morning.
So I think we can all agree that the deal came sooner than we all expected. What do you think was behind the outcome of Monday's negotiations? Was China more desperate here or the U.S.?
Yeah, it's unlikely that one side was clearly more desperate than the other. Rather, both the US and China have strategic reasons to come back to the table at this moment. For China, slowing export figures with consumer demand and growing pressure from multinational firms relocating supply chains are increasing the economic urgency. But on the US side, inflationary pressures, a political sensitive election year, and growing concerns about the resilience of critical supply chains, particularly for elective sensitive elections, but growing concerns about that. So we are seeing that it's not a sign of desperation, but a sign of strategic realism from both sides.
Well, as a reminder for our viewers, the U.S. and China have reached an agreement to slash tariffs by 150%. Now, it means that U.S. tariffs on Chinese imports will fall to 30%. It is bigger a cut than we all expected, but isn't 30% still a high tariff?
Yeah, as the 30% tariff is still relatively high by traditional trade standards. However, we need to view this in the context of where things were just a year ago. During the height of the U.S.-China trade tensions, tariffs when some Chinese goods reached over 145%, severely impacting global supply chains and raising costs for businesses and consumers. So the reduction to 30% now is a meaningful shift, both symbolically and economically aside of that. It signals that both parties are willing to make concessions and create space for longer term negotiations.
Well, going back to my first question on who's being more desperate, the U.S. or China, Professor Park, who would you say won here? Did both win, would you say?
Yeah, but this agreement may not be a full resolution. It means one side is more satisfied or more desperate. It serves an important political and economic function for both countries. It means not which country has no competitiveness. For the US, it demonstrates progress in reducing inflationary pressure, provides relief to business dependent on Chinese components. But outside of China, it is the burden on exporters and sends a stabilizing signal to global investors. So while neither side can claim total victory and total desperation, both achieved partial wins that align with their broader national interests now. So it's less about one party winning and more about preventing further loss. So in complex trade relationships like this, success often means avoiding escalation and protecting long-term competitiveness and more preserving room for in the future cooperation. So it means in that sense, both sides can walk away from this ideal and deal with meaningful gains.
So no win-lose situation. So there's that for the U.S. and China. Now, what about South Korea, Professor Park? What's taking so long for South Korea and the U.S. to draw a deal? Then are we behind because China's deal came up first?
Yet, but the time is it means the pace of a new trade agreement between South Korea and the U.S. reflects strategic priorities. It means not a time decisions and not a time priorities. It means not delay. So unlike countries starting from scratch, it means Korea doesn't need to starting from at the first point. So South Korea already has a strong foundation through Korea-U.S. free trade agreement in already. So any new deal is less about urgency and more about refining cooperation, especially in digital trade and key technologies and also some furthermore resilient supply chains. So the US also shifted toward trade policies focused on labor and economic security. It means making current negotiations from complex than traditional tariff talks. So for South Korea, aligning this with national interests requires more careful coordination.
Well, Professor Bach, before China, last week, the UK became the first country to strike a trade deal with the U.S. Now, the U.S. agreed to cut tariffs on cars to as low as 10%, while the UK will lower barriers on agricultural and auto products. Now, if South Korea were to make a deal with the U.S. by products similar to the UK deal, what would it look like?
Yeah, but finally, this wouldn't be in Korea case. It wouldn't be a copy of the UK model because if South Korea were to sign a product-specific trade agreement with the US, similar to the UK recent deal, the structure would look quite different. While the UK focused on agriculture and cars, the Korea-US deal would likely emphasize the advanced sectors such as semiconductors or electric vehicles and green technologies, where Korea has more global competitiveness. So, while like companies would be revisions to Inflation Reduction Act, especially to ensure that Korean-made electric vehicles and battery parts are traded fairly in the U.S. market. So South Korea could offer improved market access for U.S. products like agriculture goods and pharmaceuticals or digital services. So it means it would be a copy of the UK model in Korea case. It would be a more forward-looking deal with the reflex and shared innovation goals and economic security.
Well, trade officials of the U.S. and South Korea will continue their talks here in South Korea this week. So let's see if anything fruitful comes out of those discussions. Thank you so much for connecting with us, Professor Bach. You have a wonderful day.
Thank you.
With Russia and Ukraine set to hold ceasefire negotiations in Istanbul later this week, U.S. President Donald Trump says he could travel there to join the two countries. And Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky says he wants the U.S. leader to join the talks. Lee Jae-myung has more.
Thank you very much.
As Russia and Ukraine gear up for their upcoming ceasefire negotiations in Istanbul later this week, U.S. President Donald Trump said he might travel to Turkey as well. Speaking to reporters at the White House on Monday, Trump raised the prospects of taking part in the talks in the hope of putting an end to the killing on the battlefields.
I was thinking about flying over. I don't know where I'm going to be on Thursday. I've got so many meetings, but I was thinking about actually flying over there. There's a possibility of it, I guess, if I think things can happen. But we got to get it done. We got to save 5,000 lives a week. 5,000 lives is really more than that. It's worse than that.
President Trump will be visiting Saudi Arabia, the United Arab Emirates, and Qatar this week. Amid prospects of Trump taking part in the talks in Istanbul, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky said Monday that he wanted the U.S. president to join the peace talks. In a post on X, Zelensky said that everyone in Ukraine wants President Trump to take part in the peace talks in Turkey, calling it a good idea. However, the Kremlin remained silent about whether Russian President Vladimir Putin would take part in the talks this week. Lee Jae-myung, Arirang News.
South Korean conductor Chung Myung-whun has been appointed as the new music director of Italy's Teatro alla Scala. According to the Associated Press on Monday, the 72-year-old becomes the first Asian to be given the role at the famed opera house in Milan. He will succeed Riccardo Schai at the end of next year and will remain as the music director until February 2030. A famed pianist, Jang has been a conductor for a number of renowned orchestras, including the Tokyo Philharmonics. This past weekend was an especially exciting one for those K-culture lovers over in Japan, with one of the world's largest K-culture festivals, KCON Japan, having taken place there. Our culture correspondent Song Yujin was there.
The Makuhari-metse, Japan's second-largest convention center, has been transformed into a K-pop arena. Fans scream, sing along, and wave neon-colored light sticks as their favorite artists take to the stage. The lineup features rising and top-tier acts like Kiki, QWER, Zero Base One, and Highlight. This is KCON Japan 2025.
So where I am right now is KCON Japan, one of the largest K-culture festivals in the world. Now here, you can experience almost everything you need to know about Korean culture.
Launched in Los Angeles in 2012, KCON has toured over 10 countries, growing from just 10,000 attendees to now more than 100,000 per event. KCON Japan, the festival's first Asian edition, has been held annually since 2015.
Japan isn't just a major music market, it's the biggest overseas consumer of K-content. We're seeing more top-tier artists like G-Dragon, 17, and Stray Kids performing here, which shows K-pop is no longer just a foreign genre. It's now part of Japan's mainstream culture.
Beyond the music, KCON offers hands-on experiences related to the broader Korean wave. Dozens of booths introduce the latest in K-beauty, food, dramas, and merchandise. But what truly sets KCON apart is how close fans can get to their favorite stars.
It was amazing, everything I'd hoped for. The fan service was incredible. They even blew hand kisses. It felt like we were close, like friends.
What really stood out was getting to see the artist up close when they visited the artist booths. Also, at the meet and greet, you could see them from a very close distance, something you don't normally get to experience.
Having wrapped up its 3-day run in Japan, KCON now prepares for its next stop, Los Angeles, this August. 송유진, Arirang News, Chiba.
Good morning, I'm Choi Ji-hee, and this is The World Now. Beginning in the Middle East, Hamas has released an American-Israeli soldier after more than 19 months of captivity in Gaza. Hamas said the release was a goodwill gesture toward the U.S. administration. On Monday local time, Eden Alexander, a 21-year-old from New Jersey, was released by Hamas after being captured during the October 7, 2023 attacks. His release is the first since Israel resumed military operations in March, ending a previous ceasefire. The handover occurred in Khan Yunis, southern Gaza, where Alexander was transferred to the Red Cross before being handed over. President Donald Trump praised the decision, which comes a day before he visits the Middle East, as a step toward peace. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu credited the release to Israel's military pressure and political influence from the U.S. He reaffirmed his commitment to securing the release of the remaining hostages. In the first encounter with the media, Pope Leo XIV, the first American pontiff, stressed the vital role of journalists and called for the release of imprisoned reporters worldwide. On Monday, May 12th, Pope Leo addressed some 6,000 journalists at the Vatican and highlighted the importance of free speech and press freedom. At the same time, the Pope addressed the issue of divisive language by the media and called for an end to the war of words and images, advocating for communication that promotes peace. The pontiff also condemned the imprisonment of journalists worldwide and reaffirmed the Church's solidarity with those imprisoned for reporting the truth. While stating that communication was about the creation of culture, he warned against misusing artificial intelligence in journalism, stressing responsible use of the technology that can benefit all of humanity. On Monday, the Trump administration welcomed 59 white South Africans as refugees to the United States. The move, backed by claims of racial persecution and violence in South Africa, has sparked widespread controversy for the policy being racialized. President Donald Trump defended the decision by citing alleged genocide, adding that white farmers in the country are being killed, a claim that South African authorities and human rights organizations have strongly disputed. While the Trump administration has suspended the U.S. refugee admissions program in other parts of the world, the acceptance of the recent group of refugees garnered criticism for racial bias and undermining equity. Finally, in the U.S., Grammy Award-winning R&B artist and philanthropist Usher Raymond IV delivered the keynote address at Emory University's 180th commencement ceremony in Atlanta on Monday local time. He also received an honorary Doctor of Humane Letters degree from the university. In his speech, Usher encouraged graduates to be a dreamer and shared personal experiences, including the challenges he faced in his early education. He said while a diploma still matters, it's not the paper that gives the power and that you create the value behind that degree. Usher's nonprofit organization, Usher's New Look, has supported over 55,000 under-resourced young people in collaboration with Emory's Business School.
It feels pleasant right now, but by the afternoon, it's going to warm up quite a bit, possibly even feeling a little hot for some. Here in Seoul, it will climb to around 25 degrees this afternoon, but both Daegu and Gangneung will see highs soaring to near 30 degrees Celsius under plenty of sunshine. So the sun will be quite strong today. We're expecting very high UV rays for much of the country, and ozone concentrations will likely reach unhealthy levels. So be mindful of that if you're spending time outdoors. Checking on daily highs for other regions now. Gwangju will reach 27 degrees, Gyeongju topping out at 29 degrees. Remember that the capital area could have bad ultrafine dust levels in the first half of the day. Looking ahead, we have rain in the forecast for Thursday, and that rain brings down the highs to near norms. However, Jeju will see on and off rain from Thursday into Saturday. Meanwhile, stay safe in the sun today.
That is all we have for this morning. Arirang News will be back at 5 p.m. Korea time. Thanks for watching.